Welcome to Business Talk Sister Gawk. I'm Becca.
And I'm Ruthie.
And today's episode title is How to Find and Be a Podcast Guest. So we've been doing a little podcasting for a while. We just did our annual review of podcasts, right?
Ta-da.
And then we decided, we have so much content that we actually should be making another episode too, because there's a lot of things that we've learned about being a podcast guest and finding podcasts or like people who have wanted to be our guests as well. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about is there's a couple different podcast connection platforms. So originally when we first started, we were asking people that we knew, and we still do that because that is really, we find some really quality interviews that way through either like a friend of a friend or whatever that is doing something really interesting. But so there's a couple different ones that I have looked at before. There's Podmatch is one of them.
Another one that's out there is Audrey.io.
Yeah, and I actually haven't like dabbled a lot with this one. But then there's other places too that are podcast Facebook groups where you can find a guest, be a guest. Those in the past have been good if you are looking for very specific things. So there's a lot of people that are like more than willing to be on your podcast, right? In those kind of groups, because that's what they're there to do. But you also have to be very specific about what you're looking for in a guest, or it's overwhelming how many people will comment on it. And then the other negative thing, like you just have to be aware of with Facebook groups, is that if you are in a really active group and you comment on something and you're like, yeah, this sounds really interesting to me or whatever, or you're like looking to be a guest, they can comment back, or they'll say, okay, I'll DM you or like direct message. And then sometimes it can take people like a little bit to get around to it. And commonly what I've seen is about the time that they finally get back to you, you can't find the original thread that you were talking to that person on, and you can't remember the context of the conversation because it was just like comments on an original post.
Yeah. And that's like if the group is so busy that it's just posting and posting and posting, and then all that whole conversation is pushed way down in the feed that you can't even find it anymore.
Yeah. So originally when I was in a like very first Facebook group that was getting started, it was only like a couple hundred people and it was like pretty manageable. But I would say groups that get over like 300 people start just getting out of control in that way. And then it's like, oh, okay, like there's too many people talking. And I really do think it depends on the group in general too, because you can learn a lot of great things from other people in big groups.
So how would you optimize using Facebook groups for finding people to interview or people to be on their podcast?
Yeah, so if you're gonna know what kind of content you want to produce and say specifically like, this is the type of person I'm looking for. And then also, if you're going to be a guest and you want to introduce yourself in a Facebook group, you say, here are the things that I can talk about. And Podmatch actually does a really good job of walking you through that if you want to be a guest. You can say, these are the things that I can talk about any day of the week, like these 5 topics or whatever. And then what's nice about Podmatch is that it like will do algorithm matching of you with podcast hosts. The downside of Podmatch is that they want you to do all of your stuff within the platform, which is like good if you're not an organized person, but if you already have your own processes, then that can like take up a lot of time to like double do that information, especially because if you're like scheduling it on your own calendar and then scheduling it in there and all that kind of stuff.
How do you ask to be on somebody's podcast?
Yeah, so there's different ways that people do that, right? You can have an intro email. If you're doing research on podcasts, you have to find ones that are within your target market, right?
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense for you to, like, if you are doing makeup, it doesn't make sense for you to be on a podcast about cars, So you have to kind of align with your audience, what your audience is going to listen to. Because if you're trying to build exposure, it doesn't make sense to build exposure in a market that you're not trying to reach anyway.
Yeah. But also, too, really identify how you can bring value to those listeners and have that clearly defined. Sometimes we get requests from people to be on our podcast, and it's like so much information about like, we've been on this podcast, this podcast. And I'm like, I don't really care where else.
What did you do?
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's great that you've been doing all this work and getting on all these podcasts, but like, what is it that really will be valuable to my listeners, right? And then on top of that, I'm just going to say that majority of people who request to be on our podcast, they're actually doing it through someone else. So they have a team of people, and one person on their team is specifically working on making these requests. And there's actually companies out there, like in the past when podcasting wasn't a huge thing, or like talk show hosts in general, you would pay like a marketing company or like a booking company to go get you all these interviews and exposure. And they got paid based on how many interviews that guest had. That's a lot how the radio industry works. A lot of people will say, hey, I have a guest. This is the book they're putting out. This is what they want to do, blah, blah, blah. And then you get on, they'll book you if they find it interesting, right? So they're taking that same approach that they use in radio, and then they're doing it for podcasts. And I don't necessarily think that that's bad. But what I've found when we've looked at different people who are requesting to be on our podcast is that they have one pitch that they use for everybody. They don't take the time to know about us or why they think it's a good fit. And so, because they're just mass producing this stuff, which means that you could really, unfortunately, get a guest that says the exact same thing that they just said on everybody else's podcast, and it's not unique content. It's not really bringing value to anybody.
And that's why we try really hard to create custom questions to send them so that we're asking them things that maybe they haven't talked about before. And you can kind of hear it every now and then, like when you strike a chord, like if they're like, oh, now they can transition into their pitch that they've given 10,000 times and they just like go. And it's like, oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we've found, and I mean, obviously a lot of people want to be on a podcast because they're trying to get their name out there. And that's not a bad thing. Yeah. But how you go about that has all of the meaning of tact in the world, right? And one thing that we've found as hosts is that it's more fun for us to like actually get to know the person, interview them ourselves, or like talk with them and find out all the different things about them so that we can pick out, okay, this is what we think is actually going to be valuable to our listeners. And then we actually talk about why we think that's valuable. Like, wow, this is what you're doing and this is what we really appreciate about it. So that they don't have to sell themselves, because anytime anyone sells themselves, it's incredibly awkward. Oh my word.
It's way easier to talk up somebody else than to talk up yourself.
Yeah, and you want to know something? Like, that is totally an advantage that Ruthie and I have when we're interviewed on other people's podcasts. And I'm not great about talking up myself in those ways. I'll just be like, oh, I have like a business. And Ruthie's like, okay, we're backing up the train. Like, that guy's amazing, and here's why. And I'm like, oh, I was not expecting you to do that. But thank you, because I'm not good about telling people that aspect, right?
And one thing that's really fun about podcasting is that it's pretty low risk for the people that you're interviewing. Like, it's not like they have to look really good or they have to like smell good if they're going to be in person. They just kind of show up, and you can record them from wherever. So what I've seen, like if I watch a webinar on something, or if I take a LinkedIn course or something like that, what's been cool for me, and I've been starting to kind of, as I've been building confidence in what we're doing, I've started to reach out to those people, and we're going to be interviewing some of them in the future, which I'm so excited about, because I just reached out to them, filled out their contact form on their site, and then just said, hey, I heard you speak at this webinar. Can we interview you on our podcast? And gave like just a little spiel or whatever. But that's, for me, what has been really fun is because it's not just going to, like, the platforms like Audrey.io and Podmatch and Facebook groups, they're really valuable. But what's fun for me is being able to find someone who I think is really cool and reach out to them and say, hey, can we interview you? And because it's a pretty, like low risk, they more often than not, we've gotten people that said, yeah, but I will say, be prepared to be ghosted. Like if somebody reaches out and then you're like going to do it and then they like don't follow up or whatever. We've had quite a few of those where like we set up something and then they just don't show up to the meeting, and then we follow up, and then Becca and I, usually our go-to is like, wow, they probably died.
Like, wow, I hope they're okay.
Yeah. Which I think is maybe a morbid mentality, but I feel like it's actually like good because we're not basing our worth in being able to get interviews. We're just like, oh, okay, it didn't work out. Oh man, what if they died?
like we should really be understanding to whatever's going on in their life right now.
Yeah. And a logistical thing too, when you are scheduling out, is logistical a word?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. It's a logistical thing. When you're scheduling out with people, if you schedule out too far in advance, people will forget. Or if you have a huge backlog, you either need to be really open and honest about that and say, hey, we're recording this, but we're booked out 2 months in advance before this is really going to go live. You need to like
prep them for it.
That so that they don't think it's going to come out right away. But we found that the when we book them really out far in advance, then people more often than not forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can get it within the next 2 weeks or so of reaching out to someone, if you can schedule it in the next 2 weeks, then that is kind of the ideal time frame that we found.
Or send a follow-up email, like, reminder, this is coming up.
And going back to like the low risk thing, when you think about, like, Becca always is really into data, which is awesome, that 10% of podcasts are recorded live. So the vast majority of them, 90% of them, are pre-recorded. So if you go into that when you're requesting, like, interviewing other people, and just tell them, like we talked about this in a couple episodes ago, and just tell them, hey, if you say something that you didn't want to say, just pause and we'll edit it out. So like when you reach out to people, like, making sure that they're aware, hey, it's not that big of a deal if you don't have to be nervous about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also think it's really important to do your due diligence on your guest. Because if you don't do that, it's so abrupt. And we've actually heard this from and quite a few different guests where they're like, wow, like, this is the most thorough interview like I've ever had.
And that's in regards to people that have done a ton of interviews. But one thing that, and those are valuable interviews. Like, I've enjoyed getting to know those people and learning about their lives. And but some of my favorite ones that we've done have been with people who do not get interviewed a lot. And you just, like, it's like finding this gold mine of knowledge that people just, they don't ask them. And so you get to just talk with them, and it's not scripted, but you're asking experts on things, and they can just, like, be like, oh yeah, and just tell you, even though nobody's ever asked them before. And so it's so fun to get those responses that are not canned from someone who's done 20 interviews in a week. So those are my favorites.
Yeah. And I would say, like, the majority of people that are on Facebook groups, podcast, like, platforms for connections, they're really big business minded, or like they're pushing to grow their business, right? And they're doing these things because they know a lot about marketing. And the people that I find, like, are hidden gems that we're just like, ooh, this is good, is people that, like, are referrals or whatever, and we're like, wow, you're doing something amazing, let's talk about it. And, like, they do a lot of work to get their content ready because they're so excited to be interviewed. and I love those people because they're not just doing it to, like, make money. They're doing it because they're like, you want to know something about what I do and you see value in it? Okay, like, I'll tell you all about it.
And they just want to share their knowledge, and that's fun. Now we're going to talk about what it takes to be a good guest for somebody else.
Yeah, so it's really important, and we've learned this the hard way, to have what you're going to talk about and what you have as your end goal for the listener, right? Because Otherwise, it's just you just hanging out and rambling, and you're not getting like any call to action of like at the end, this is what I really want people to get out of this. Either it's like, I want you to like go check out this YouTube channel and like listen to more stuff on this if you really found this valuable content, or go listen to my podcast, or go find this book, whatever it is. Provide value in a way for them to connect with you further. Or it could just be, hey, like, yeah, if you enjoyed this, follow me on Facebook or Instagram or whatever that platform is that you're using.
Yeah, and on that note, follow us on Facebook.
Business Talk Sister Cock.
Yeah. Also, I was thinking about how one thing that's been really valuable is when you've been interviewed, you learn how to be a better interviewer. And it also kind of just develops a level of compassion too, because as you are being interviewed, you're responding to someone else's prompts. Whereas when you're interviewing someone, like when Becca and I interview people, we've got our Zoom chats up, and then we just ask this next question to each other. And so we know what we're going to ask the person next, but they don't know. I mean, we send the questions to them beforehand, so they know that we're going to ask those questions, but they don't know what order we're going to jump around in, or if we have subsequent questions that we're going to ask. So it can kind of feel, when you're on the receiving end of those questions, it's really good to develop that compassion of like, wow, this really is kind of unnerving. Like, I have to respond right now.
Yeah. When we were interviewed a couple different times, like the first time Ruthie and I did an interview together, we also realized, wow, people get confused because our voices sound the same.
Yeah.
So then that was like, should we be like saying, and this is Becca talking, like, or whatever. So those are things that we learned about doing a 2-person interview. But also when you're looking at places to be interviewed by, you need to figure out those value points. Like I said, this is what I can talk about, right? And do your research on those things. If you listen to people's podcasts and then you go check out their websites or whatever, and they have a contact us form, that's how some people like connect with us, is they send us an email. And we're not the greatest at looking at all of those in a timely manner. But that is how some people have reached out to us.
Just
Facebook
filling out
groups.
a contact form, yeah.
Yeah, filling out a contact form can be a place to do that. I also think it's really important to listen to someone's podcast and know what they do.
At the very least, read their About Us page.
Yeah, before you send them an email, because you need to know exactly, like, this is the type of content they produce. I listen to these episodes, and I think I can offer you this episode, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's been so many times where people have been like, I want to be on your podcast. And then we're like, have you even listened to our podcast? And they're like, no. Yeah. And so they have no idea that we do something silly at the end. And I'm like, okay, so we do something funny. Do you have anything embarrassing you want to share? And they're like, what?
Yeah. A lot of these podcasters are really busy. You have to like be able to get them the first time by providing a really valuable phone call or email or whatever, showing that you've done your research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another thing that I think is really important is having some sort of voice recording that you're sending to, if you're going to say, I would love to be on your podcast. Because here's the thing. I have regretted, I mean, not in this podcast, but like in the past when I've been thinking about going on someone's podcast or something, I've regretted not listening to their voice first and being like, is this someone that actually has good cadence? Because that can be something that is really hard to navigate in editing or whatever else afterwards. And I think about that when we're going to interview somebody.
Yeah. And also, when you, going back to value that you can add, you don't have to be uber salesy. We've all listened to podcasts where the whole thing is like, okay, can you just get to something valuable? I'm so tired of listening to you sell yourself. Like,
I'm amazing. Like the whole time.
If you have valuable content to say, that is your sales pitch. If you can be so knowledgeable about something and say something that really is profound or like have really good information, that is your sales pitch. It like, if you can, like definitely have your call to action. If you want somebody to check out your website, say say that. businesstalksistergog.com. Anyway, but you don't have to sit there and like your whole pitch is just you constantly
oozing sales.
Yeah, like, oh, check out this course that I made, or check out this printable item that I have, or whatever. Like, just like that can be really aggressive. It's like, okay, well, why can't you just tell me what's in that? You know, like you can definitely have those resources available to people. I'm not saying that, but don't make that the focal point of your message in your recording.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it does help to also have some good stories of like something in your back pocket to share. So anytime we talk about something, stories really help people maintain information. And so if you can say, in this specific example, this is what happened, and here's how this made a difference, whatever it is, if it was like a life experience or whatever, you're going to help people understand, oh, this is what I need to take away from this conversation.
Okay, and do you want to know where you can find valuable content? Our Facebook page.
Yeah, whenever we find free stuff or whatever, we'll just like throw it on there. So
Yeah.
you should follow that because that's where you can find updates when we have a new episode coming out too.
And I don't even feel hypocritical saying that. I feel very good about it because I know that it's valuable information, and I know that our podcast does have valuable information for our listeners. So you're welcome for that.
And all of it's free. Come on, people.
And now we're going to transition into our Sister Gog portion where I am going to recount a memory that I had from when Becca came home from studying abroad in Ireland. So basically, again, we have a large family. So all 6 of Becca's siblings, so myself included, went to the airport. My grandpa was there too. This was like several years ago. And we show up and we're sitting there for literally like 2 hours. And when you have...
My flight was delayed.
And when you have little kids, I think Micah was like...
Teeny
6.
tiny.
Yeah, he was a little munchkin at that time. So it was like there was a lot of running, a lot of getting into things. And anyway, but we were sitting there and all of a sudden... right before her plane was gonna land, my mom whips out this backpack. It's like, and then pulls out these pizza.
Like she saved a whole bunch of like cardboard from pizza.
Yeah, like the little discs. Circle guys. And then it had painted the different letters of welcome home. And we had enough people that we could all spell out welcome home together. Like, there was a couple of friends that Becca had there too. But it was like, when did you do this? And then so we're sitting there like all giddy. We're standing there for like 10 minutes and all these people kept walking by and they're like, oh, how cute. Oh, how cute. And I just remember Becca coming down the terminal and like she's standing there, and Becca and I both, when we get excited, we tend to like, clench our fists and like do little like shimmy dances. I don't really know how to describe it. But anyway, I remember seeing her with her suitcase and then just like, ha! And then we all were standing there with our signs, like just standing in place and like shaking. And this lady was sitting on the bench next to us and just started bawling. She was like, this is the most beautiful thing. And so we were all, it was like slow motion because we're all trying to get her to see the sign. So nobody had like made a move to go see her. And then, so it was like, we all just broke formation and ran to go see her. And we all met in the terminal and it was just really special.
Do you want to know something after that though that I thought about, because you guys did that and you had so many comments from people? You want to know what just makes people feel loved? You literally go stand there with a welcome home sign and a present. Like, doesn't even matter if you know the people. You get off the terminal and you're just like, welcome back. And like, seriously, you could totally make somebody's day.
Yeah.
And
or freak them out real bad.
Okay, I'm just also going to say about that experience, like, this is like the other side of this experience for me is I was like walking from the plane down the hallway and I was
broke formation first and sprinted.
No, just wait. This is even before you guys saw me.
Okay.
I was like, I could go in the bathroom right now and shove a whole bunch of stuff in my shirt and make it look like I'm pregnant and freak my mom out. Like, surprise, you have only seen me from the face up.
4 months.
Look what I was working on. But I like, as soon as I was like, I could do that, but you know what? I'm just so tired. I do not have time to prank my family right now. And so then like I got down there, and when I saw them, my first thought as I like see this welcome home was like, wow, I'm so glad I did not do that.
Yeah. And another thing about our family is that we're very loud. And so then when we like saw her, then we're all like, Becca! And then everybody in the whole terminal's like, what's happening?
They're probably just like, oh my word.
All right. Thanks for joining us this week. We will see you again next week. I don't know what happened there.
Bye.